I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
They call them dumps, big massive dumps.
God bless you.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Tuesday. It's another day. Another fun show here. Apparently, what is something breaking about Lauren Boebert, or are we talking about the stakes? Because I see people, people keeping their meat tight.
I like my meat tight. Tighten up my meat.
I don't know what's going on there, but fun. Great, interesting way to start the show. All right, so that said, talking about the show, we get some fun segments. We're going to talk, of course, about Marjorie Greene. We have some interesting comments about climate change. We have Trump screwing donors, big surprise. Matt Walsh, cancel culture. Boomers versus millennials on home ownership, as always. And then we also have Lizzo in the news. I really don't always ever talk about celebrity stuff, but I think this was very interesting. And so we're going to have that conversation. I'm going to talk to you about what Lizzo had gotten in trouble for and how she handled it. So, interesting. It's a good show. So, please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. Again, helps us out greatly. No kidding. Well, there's nothing wrong with sex work. But if you're somebody who does sex work and is against sex work, well, it's not a good thing. It's a little bit of hypocrisy. But okay, anyway, maybe, let me go and find that story and maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. That said, we've got the show. Let's start out with some Marjorie Greene.
This earth warming and carbon is actually healthy for us.
That was Representative Marjorie Greene talking about how she loves carbon. Carbon, it's so wonderful. What a great gas. And it's so wonderful, by the way, that we are burning through things that will eventually bring about an uninhabitable planet. But you know what? She loves carbon because apparently it's good. She loves it. So now, look, we know Marjorie Greene is acting as basically a good little mouthpiece for the fossil fuel industry. They literally buy her campaign. They pay her to peddle this kind of nonsense and garbage. The fact is that she is denying climate change, the science as usual, and of course the direct role that carbon, as well as other greenhouse gases like methane, fossil fuels are having when it comes to extreme weather events like droughts, hurricanes, sea level rise, etc. But before I get to that, I want to show you the full clip here in context of her statements, and then we'll break it down.
We've already warmed 1 degree Celsius, and do you know what's happened since then? Here, let me tell you. We have had more food grown since then, which feeds people. We are able to, producing fossil fuels keeps people's houses warm in the winter. That saves people's lives. People die in the cold.
Right.
This earth warming and carbon is actually healthy for us. It helps us to feed people. It helps keep people alive. It helps. The earth is more green than it was years and years ago, and that's because of the earth warming. That's because of carbon. Because
now I love how she talks about, oh, you know, it's so good because it feeds people, and then of course she always votes against funding for feeding people. Weird. But look, okay, so she says, well, you know, again, the world, climate change, it's getting warmer, but you know what? That just means things are getting greener, and that's good. And plus, hey, it gets cold in the wintertime, and you know, people die when it's cold. Yeah, no kidding. Just ask Ted Cruz. Just ask Texas. And their completely non-winterized, completely privatized power grid that failed during a climate change fueled freak ice storm. Yes. Now, wait a minute, you say. How does global warming make ice storms? Explain it, libtard. Well, I will, but you might have to actually sit down and learn something. So you might, you might not be interested in doing that because you actually do have to learn stuff, facts, knowledge. But hey, if you're interested, great. I love open-minded people. So look, again, let's put it very, very simply here. Climate and weather patterns are complicated. I know. Scientists think that the polar vortex, so there's this thing, polar vortex, and what it does is that it basically traps cold Arctic air in the north. So now, what had happened in Texas, scientists are thinking that this polar vortex, it wasn't weak enough to keep all that cold air trapped. So it went further south than normal, all the way down to Texas. So think about it this way. The vortex is a spinning top. The faster the top spins, the more it stays balanced. But, and that's basically a strong spin. But if you have a weak spin, it starts to wobble, and that cold air starts to escape. Okay? And that pushes this cold air into the jet stream, and the jet stream carries the cold air across the country. So again, it's complicated, but also simple in a way. So let me show you this here. This is what a polar vortex generally is supposed to look like. You got your stable, polar vortex, keeps the colder temperatures up north where they're supposed to be. Then you have a disrupted polar vortex, and wow, that goes really far down south, even again to places like Texas. And that can cause some pretty messed up weather events. And again, there are issues with the jet stream also becoming destabilized as a result of climate change, putting all of that carbon, all of that heat into the atmosphere. And so now there's more. A recent study by Judah Cohen, the director of the seasonal forecasting at the Atmospheric and Environmental Research Center, published this study in the journal Science in 2021, found that the polar vortex is breaking down more frequently than it used to in the last few decades. So again, it used to be relatively stable. Yes, once in a while it would do that breakdown. Now it's breaking down more often. And that means more often this colder air, this polar air, is reaching deeper into the United States. That's not necessarily a good thing. As you can see, in a place like Texas where you have those freak storms, it causes lots of loss of life and devastation. And so that's an effect of global warming, of climate change. In fact, here's what Cohen says. He says, my argument is that Arctic change from global warming is forcing the jet stream into a configuration that at least partially favors a weaker polar vortex. And other research, of course, corroborates, saying that when the Arctic is abnormally warm, it has seen significant ice loss, which we had seen. The jet stream also tends to weaken. When that happens, you get more droughts, you get more heat waves, you get more cold spells, you get more heavy precipitation, all in different places in the country. And so all of this research is coming together and showing not just warming temperatures, but just a breakdown of climate. There is massive climate disruption that is changing the way things work. And when that happens, when you change that climate as rapidly as you're doing, you're making it so that humans and other species have to basically adapt to those changes more quickly than we would naturally be able to. And so that's the issue here with human-fueled climate change. We cannot adapt to the changes that we are making quickly by burning the amounts of fossil fuels that we're burning. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. So again, it may, like, if you don't understand how it works, it seems counterintuitive. Like, oh, what are you talking about? It snowed. It's colder temperatures in Texas. What global warming? What global warming? But I think that argument misses a lot of things, misses a lot of context, and really simplifies the amazing complexity of our planet and how little we actually understand the relationship between climate, weather, and all these different patterns and how these systems are all interlinked. Way more than just, hey, snowball, therefore eat it, libtards. Global warming, not real. I brought a snowball into the Senate. But let's get to her point about food, because I think this is very important as well. She says, oh, the planet's greening. This means we're growing more food. Food good, right? Well, I mean, let's just ignore the fact that we actually waste in the United States alone, about 40% of our food. So yes, we actually do produce a tremendous amount of food. Almost half of it goes to waste as a result of capitalism. But anyway, that said, we might want to rein that in because of climate change. There's going to be just some disruptions in the food supply. Climate change, according to a new NASA study published in the journal Nature Food, climate change may affect the production of corn and wheat as early as 2030, just 8 years from now, under a high greenhouse gas emission scenario. And of course, knowing Republicans, all they do is spew noxious gas into the atmosphere whenever they talk. Oh, and by the way, they also represent just their donors in the fossil fuel industry. So they're not going to do anything. And so we are going to have a higher greenhouse gas emission scenario, especially if, again, you have a midterm wipeout where you get Republicans taking the House and the Senate, making Biden an extremely lame duck, which I already think he's a lame duck anyway, because he's not getting anything done. But it'll be even more obstruction, even less getting done, even more money to fossil fuels. So when they actually do agree on something and do something bipartisan, it usually means we're getting screwed over. Regular people and corporations are benefiting. All you have to do is just look at the bipartisan corporate handout bill. And there you go. It's not looking good. And then you get a Republican president in 2024. We're back to that high carbon scenario. Not good. Now, let me give you the numbers on that, by the way, on how much. Corn crop yields are projected to decline 24%. Now, conversely, wheat could potentially see growth of about 17%. So again, it does show you the complexity. Some things will increase, some things will be better suited to the new climate as it changes, as things get warmer, but other things will not be as suited to these climates. And again, that means economic disruption. It also means food supply disruption. So these are very, very serious things. Now, onto the issue of greening, right? Let's get to the greening. Which is ironic. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, so one thing that I've never seen anybody answer about this is what happens to the places that are already green in this greening scenario. Can't really get greener, can they? And if the greening is driven by warming, which 97% of scientists say, yep, it is, then the warming, you gotta understand, it doesn't just happen in one or two places. That's why I call it global warming, right? So these places that are getting warmer, well, you're going to get to a point of where it gets so warm in these places that are already warm that the green will turn to brown. Well, that's not a good thing, right? Again, when it turns to brown, that means things are dying. If people that living in those places that were once green that turn brown, and they lose their ability to grow food, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think they're going to do? Well, a lot of people are going to move somewhere else. And you know what that means? Mass migration. Now, mass migration, also known as immigration. Where do you think people are going to go? They're going to go to other countries. They're going to try to get into the United States, European countries, wealthier nations for sure. You're going to see a migration from poorer countries that are not able to handle this, especially when it comes to the equatorial regions that are going to be hit the hardest. Island nations that are going to be sunk by rising sea levels. All those people got to come somewhere. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, you know how she stands on immigration, right? She's not in favor of it. So I guess maybe, though, she can look at that situation and go, oh, great, wonderful, mass migration. People are coming to the border. Now I can fearmonger and keep my seat in perpetuity because people are going to be afraid of other people trying to come in because of the climate change that we helped, or at least that we didn't do anything to prevent on our end. Now, one more point though, and she's actually right about this one. The Earth is more green. You know why? China. Fascinating. So, according to NASA research reported in 2019 by Mashable, 2 NASA satellites have watched the Earth grow greener over the last 20 years. Why? China's planting more trees. Millions and millions of trees. So, literally, the Chinese are planting millions of trees in order to, I guess, maybe do a little bit of an offset of their coal usage. Now, of course, that's not going to do it. That's not going to be nearly enough to cover. They actually have to reduce their emissions. However, the report said China's intensive greening efforts have been vastly overshadowed by civilization's still rising carbon emissions, which at the current pace likely won't even peak for another decade. And China is largely to blame. And by the way, as some of you point out, SBloom85 in the chat says China's planting more trees, Brazil is burning more trees. And of course, they're burning the Amazon forest in order to make way for what? Agriculture. Specifically, cattle. So that's one way. And again, the Amazon is known as the lungs of the world. You might not want to mess with that. You might want to actually not let them burn the lungs of the world. So, yeah. Now, again, here's the thing. So, I see this argument all the time from the right on climate change. Even though, like, the ones that that admit that it's actually happening and say, okay, yeah, maybe we have something to do with it, but I mean, we can't really do anything because China's not doing anything. So why should we have to harm our economy? For one, who says that you have to hurt your economy in order to actually transition to, away from fossil fuels? You realize that, again, we're not really in control of fossil fuels. It's more of a world market. So when it comes to like, oh, energy independence, it's a BS narrative. There is no such thing as American energy independence or American energy. It's Shell's energy. It's BP's energy. It's these oil companies, oil that we've just allowed them to extract from the ground and then send to the refineries. And then those refineries send the oil or the refined oil out to the world market. And they just go buy it. And so it's not, when you have a global economy, you can't really have independent energy, American energy, right? No, it's corporate energy. Now, the thing is, you actually can have energy that is domestic if you do things like solar and wind. I mean, you can't import wind. You can't import the sun. The sun's for everybody. Shines everywhere. So it's kind of stupid not to put out solar panels to collect all of that massively free energy that is everywhere. But again, Marjorie Greene, not the smartest people. Republicans, not very smart. And really, when it comes down to it, corrupt. Because again, this energy is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so they do not want anything to get in between them and their money. And that's generally what it comes down to. And so on that, by the way, we could set an example for the world by investing massively into solar, into other forms of alternative energy that will make us actually energy independent and reduce our reliance on foreign sources of fossil fuels. We can do that. We just have to have the political will. The whole idea that we should do nothing because China isn't able to do enough or isn't doing enough and is developing as well as India is absurd. It's a stupid thing. No, we should absolutely do something. There's no reason that we can't. And by the way, we as a world community really do need to come together on this and do something, because at the end of the day, we share the same planet. Okay. A multi-billion-dollar industry that literally cannot survive without the billions in government subsidies they get, points out David Richardson when it comes to the oil industry. That is absolutely true. Absolutely true. Pretending to be stupid makes more money, says Cindy D. Also true. By Republicans. Very much pretend to be stupid. Speaking of that. All right. Oh boy. Former President Donald Trump scammed millions of dollars from donors through fundraising to a fake election fund. These are part of the findings of the House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot. They claimed that Trump's presidential campaign had raised $250 million from his supporters by telling them the money would be used to fight against voter fraud, and that the campaign had known, and this is backed up by a lot of the testimony that we had seen from Trump aides around him, telling him that, hey, we know that that the election was not stolen. We don't have any evidence of voter fraud. In the words of William Barr, the whole idea that Joe Biden stole the election was just bullshit. And so he knew, he absolutely knew, and continued to run this grift right up until the end, right until he couldn't do any more. So now, by the way, the January 6th committee also claims that he had diverted money to his own political organizations. Now, Trump's campaign had sent out millions of fundraising emails to supporters, encouraging them to donate to help fight the voter fraud between Election Day and January 6th. Many of these emails asked supporters to donate to an election defense fund for legal cases related to the election. But of course, you find out that no, it turns out that fund didn't actually exist. It's not real. It was fake. An investigator for the committee, let's see, that Amanda Wick, who was the investigator, she said that money, most of the money that was supposed to go to this fund that doesn't really exist, went to Mr. Trump's Save America Political Action Committee, and not to any sort of election-related litigation. The evidence, she says, highlights how the Trump campaign pushed false election claims to fundraise, telling supporters that it would be used to fight voter fraud that did not exist. The Trump campaign knew these claims of voter fraud were false, yet they continued to barrage small-dollar donors with emails encouraging them to donate to something called the Official Election Defense Fund. The Select Committee discovered that no such fund existed. It was fake, not real. It was a fairy tale, just like the massive amounts of so-called voter fraud. And look, none of us here watching this are surprised. Why should we be? This is Trump. Now, remember, this is a guy that ran a fake university, as well as a charity that went and bought a portrait of himself with donor money. A $10,000 portrait of himself, by the way. Donald Trump, I don't understand why more people don't realize that he's the biggest con man of the century. I mean, I don't think I've seen anybody run more scams than the Trump family. How do people not understand this? How do people not get it? It's incredibly obvious. And yet, people still gave him $250 million. $250 million. Now, look, to be a right-winger in this modern Republican Party, to be a Trump supporter specifically, well, they have to think you're pretty stupid, right? And in their defense, you would continue to be proving them right if you continue to give money to Trump. But it also shows something more important here. And it shows you how little people like Trump actually think about their own voters. How much they think about you. How little they think about you. Now, look, there's a lot of disdain from the left. And it's pretty open towards right-wingers. We know that. We're honest about how sometimes stupid and backwards y'all seem to be. A lot of you, at least. But hey, we're also honest about it. We'll tell you how we feel. But we also have this naive belief, maybe it's naive, I don't know, that we can fix them. We can fix conservatives. We can make them into progressives. If they just knew the truth. And I don't know, again, it seems slightly naive, but I'm going to keep trying. Because at the end of the day, I still believe that you can cure ignorance with knowledge. That you can solve prejudice by expanding your horizons. And we've seen plenty of examples of that happening before. People, getting to know people who are different and realizing, oh, you know what? It turns out that person, that trans person isn't after my children. That trans person just wants to live their life. That gay person, not a predator. That liberal, not trying to go out there and take all my money and send it to Venezuela or something or whatever. No, we're just trying to live our lives. And we're trying to make the country better for everyone else. And when you do all that stuff, when you actually expose yourself to facts and different people, you realize that there's really nothing to be afraid of. Now, conservatism, and I've argued this before, it's just another way of saying, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of change. I'm afraid. If you're a conservative, you tell the world that I am afraid of change. And you know what? That's okay. Change is scary. It is. But again, a lot of the change here that we advocate for is for the better. Now, that's, again, how many on the left do see the average conservative. But here's the thing. Right-wing leadership, and I mean your politicians, your so-called thought leaders, grifters, what they see in you is a mark. What they see is dollar signs, somebody to be exploited very easily. And look, politicians, again, all these people are the elites. The billionaires are the elites. And what you are to them is just a sucker. they can get money from. That's it. That's it. Now, again, Democratic politicians, oftentimes, they're the same way. We can agree on that. They're also the elites. They're also the elites. And very few of them, I could count maybe a handful of Democrats that actually will, represent the average person. But here's the thing, the kind of the difference here as well. Corporate Democrats, instead of seeing their voters as morons, as Republicans see their own voters, no, the Democrats, they hate their base. Oh, they hate it. See, they constantly condescend to them, lie to them, gaslight them, and tell them, oh, we can't do things that you actually want us to do that's actually going to help your life, because, that's going to harm our donors. And they don't actually say that part. They get all upset when you point out that there are donors. And again, donors that apply and give to both parties. Again, because both parties are incredibly corrupt. And it's because of the system that we have of money in politics, where you have corporations that are able to buy our politicians so incredibly easily and cheaply. It's the system that's broken. And so they will, again, lie, gaslight, and then, they'll even try to weaponize like things like identity. There's a recent story where, there's Democrats that are making this pact to go after Rashida Tlaib, saying that, oh, no, we need a black person to represent that district, even though the voters in the district overwhelmingly approve of Rashida Tlaib and her job performance and what she's been trying to do. She has been representing them well. Oh, no, but she's progressive. And also, but we're just going to say that it's because she's not black and we need a black person. No, that's weaponizing identity to try to take on somebody that you don't like, who happens to be progressive. And so that's an example of the Democrats being corrupt. And the Democrats going against the average person. They hate progressives. But at least they don't think that we're stupid. The Republican Party absolutely thinks their own voters are stupid. Easy marks. But look, understand too, by the way, let me give you an example. Bernie Sanders, for example, he's progressive. If he had raised $250 million for whatever reason, right? Election challenges on behalf of progressives, or trying to raise money to give to progressives to help them in their races, right? And if he had said that and raised all this money and then didn't give it to any of them, just pocketed the money, you know what would happen? The left would be outraged. Outraged. Bernie would be drummed out. Nobody would ever listen to him again. He would never see the light of day in politics, in progressive politics. He would be canceled incredibly hard. But if Trump does it, or other right-wingers do it, they just send him more and more money. Oh, you just robbed me? Great. Here's more money. Here's more money. Now, the committee also later played video testimony from a former Trump campaign digital director, Gary Kobe, who then basically agreed that the use of the phrase election defense fund was nothing more than a marketing tactic. Just a marketing for them to scam you. Now, speaking of tactics, by the way, the one thing that Trump's campaign was actually busted on was automatic recurring donations. Now, that is another tactic that they use to rob their own voters. Now, people will donate, and there were numerous stories about this. They would donate thinking, okay, it's a one-time thing. I'm going to give a one-time donation to Trump, not knowing that it was set to automatically donate, not every month, every week. So if you give a big donation, like $500, right? That's a big donation. You must really believe. You send it out and you're like, all right, Trump victory. And then the next week, $500. The next week, $500. Now, some of the stories that I read that are people on, Social Security, retirement, that are bringing in like $5,000, or I'm sorry, not $5,000, $1,000 a month. If you have $500 being taken every week, you're getting the hole real fast. Real fast. That's what it hit, and that's what happened. And by the way, contributors had to, and this is what makes it more of the scam. Because again, if you were giving them your money, well, I mean, look, I still think you're wrong and kind of dumb to give Trump any money. But okay, if you want to do that, that's your money. But the scam here is contributors had to go through a very fine print disclaimer and manually uncheck a box to opt out. You think everybody's going to pay attention? You're going to know that? Come on. If you do, you're lying. Everybody knows. It's just like signing the end user license agreement. Whenever you download an app or go to a website, you have to scroll or play a game. You scroll right through it and hit OK. Nobody reads it. Show me one person who reads it. Nobody. So again, it's kind of the same situation. You think everybody's going to know that you have to manually opt out? No. And by the way, the Trump team then went to more lengths to make that increasingly opaque disclaimer. In fact, an investigation by the New York Times showed this. The donation page introduced a second pre-checked box called a money bomb that would automatically double a person's contribution. And again, you got to uncheck that box. And then they also buried it in lines of text that are in bold and capital letters that would overwhelm the opt-out language. And that trapped a lot of people. As a result, do you know how much money they had to refund? The Republican National Committee and their shared accounts issued more than 530,000 refunds worth a total of $64.3 million. Wow. Now, let's compare that. The Biden campaign also had some issues, right? Now, the Biden campaign issued refunds, and refunds happen for a variety of different reasons, right? And not all of them, of course, are from scams, but a big majority of that very well could have been. The Biden campaign and its equivalent Democratic committees made only 37,000 refunds, totaling $5.6 million in the same time period. Interesting. I definitely think there's some grift going on here. Now, especially when you look where that money went. Most of that money went to Mr. Trump, the Save America PAC, which was founded on November 9th, and not to any election-related litigation, according to Ms. Vick. She added that Mr. Trump's PAC then made millions of dollars in donations to political allies, including $1 million to a charitable foundation founded by his chief of staff, Mark Meadows. There's a payoff. $5 million to the company that ran President Trump's January 6th rally in front of the White House. The fundraising emails, Vick said, continued through January 6th, even as President Trump spoke on the ellipse. 30 minutes after the last email was fundraising sent, the Capitol was breached. So there you go. There seems to be some grifting going on. Just a little bit. Now, what's important about this? Because again, a lot of us aren't surprised to see that Trump is stealing money from his supporters. Okay? And lying, misleading, grifting, whatever you want to call it, right? From his own supporters. Well, this plays in to what the case the committee's trying to make. And they're trying to lay out the fact that Trump knew that the election was not stolen, there wasn't mass voter fraud, but that he had continued to lie for at least a couple of reasons. Number one, of course, to hold on to power, because of course he wants to hold on to power. His ego wouldn't let him lose. And secondly, and I think most importantly, and pretty much the reason that I think he wanted to be in the White House in the first place, is to make money, to keep making money off the American people. Now, that said, the grift itself, that's not necessarily a crime. Misleading emails, oh, well, what are you going to do, right? But undermining democracy, well, based on a lie, well, that kind of is a crime. And so we might want to think about, holding him accountable for that. Just saying. Moving on. Because conservatives love cancel culture. In fact, you have two, Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, that are openly embracing it. Well, look at that. So now this follows a pro-trans report that was aired on a Fox station by reporter Brian Yennis. I showed that on yesterday's show. Fantastic segment, very, very heartwarming, very nice. And it actually covered the story of a transgender teen and his family's acceptance. After that, the right-wing hatosphere went absolutely ballistic. Walsh, along with Ben Shapiro and others, completely lost it. So now I want to give you some tweets here by Ben Shapiro. But first, one by Walsh. He said, I've appeared on Fox News many times. I appreciate the platform they give me. If what I'm about to say ruins that relationship, so be it. We have to call this evil lunacy out wherever we see it, especially on our own side. Yes, because, gender-affirming healthcare is evil. Funny enough, cis people get gender-affirming care all the time. You know what part of gender-affirming care is? Social. It's social. Treating them as their gender. But anyway, okay. So now he continued by saying that I know for a fact that many people at Fox do not approve of this and would never have agreed to air this radical far-left trans propaganda. Right. So now Shapiro, let's go to him because he's got some opinions as well. Okay.
There's some whores in this house.
Yeah. Okay. Now he said this. This would be absolute despicable, insane lunacy if I saw it on CNN or MSNBC. See it on Fox News is a complete betrayal of anything remotely resembling conservatism or decency. Well, I mean, look, that's your opinion, man. I guess you're able to have it, but sure, it's a free country, but okay. He then adds, every element of this video is propagandistic, dangerous garbage. The report states that this biologically female child was choosing her gender before she could speak. This is madness. That has lots of feelings there. Not a lot of facts. Continues. The report further states that Ryland's parents began the social transition at the age of 5. This is child abuse. The vast majority of children display signs of gender dysphoria desist over time. Not true. That's actually not true. And then says, I'd rather have a living son than a dead daughter. Again, it's propagandistic sloganeering. There's no credible evidence that transition alleviates suicidal ideation among children who identify as LGBTQ+. Actually, no, there's tons of evidence that gender-affirming care does save lives. Multiple studies, even. Oh, but he says they're not credible. No, multiple studies have shown that providing gender-affirming care is life-saving because it dramatically reduces depression and suicidal ideation. Now, why do they have that in the first place? It's not simply because they're trans. It's because of how society treats trans people. People like you, Ben Shapiro. People like you, Matt Walsh. In fact, the conclusion of one of the studies published in 2020 found that there's significant inverse association between treatment with pubertal suppression during adolescence and lifetime suicidal ideation among transgender adults who wanted this treatment. These results align with past literature suggesting that pubertal suppression for transgender adolescents who want the treatment is associated with favorable mental health outcomes. Oh, weird. Shapiro also says this. People are afraid of what they do not understand, the reporter says, but we do understand the agenda. We understand that this is propaganda on behalf of the destruction of children, and it is vile. Look, Ben, light on the facts, heavy on the feels today. Heavy on the feels. And then finally he says this. Fox says it's too important to conservatives to be weaponized on behalf of the most radical leftist propaganda imaginable. Propaganda that aims directly at the mental and physical health of children. They should terminate whoever is responsible for this agitprop abomination. No, it's actually Ben Shapiro that is aiming at the mental and physical health of children. Dysphoria is a real thing. Gender-affirming care actually helps solve or alleviate that dysphoria by getting them the treatment that they need. But look, here's the thing, though. Cancel culture. This is absolute cancel culture. He says they should fire people. You should get fired for doing this. For putting out a segment that is not hate-filled. All right. And by the way, Walsh, I'm going to show you a video here. This is Walsh also embracing the cancellation of people at Fox News for this segment.
All the parties involved should explain themselves, and then they should be fired also. Oh, are you promoting cancel culture? You want to cancel these people? Absolutely, I want to cancel them. Yes. They should be fired for sure. Named, shamed, and fired. When you put dishonest, militant trans propaganda on the airwaves. So this is propaganda made by and for an audience that doesn't watch Fox and hates Fox, and especially hates Fox's actual audience. But forget about conservative for a moment, okay? Put that aside. If Fox News wants to call itself news, then it cannot put insane falsehoods and radical far-left lies and propaganda on the air if you want to be a news organization.
No, you know what? This guy is scared. No, he's absolutely fearful. And again, that's what conservatism is about. He doesn't even want this segment to be on Fox, to even show the other side. I thought you were all about having a free marketplace of ideas. Well, now you had your side. You're on Fox News all the time, peddling your hateful bigotry. Okay? So the other side comes and actually shows a real transgender family. And you can't handle it. You can't handle it because guess what? It shows them being a very normal, lovely family. It completely shatters all of your disgusting notions about transgender people. And that's it. That's it. And so, look, these are your free speech warriors, people. I never want to hear Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh whine about free speech ever again. They've shown that they're complete and utter hypocrites about it. They don't mean any of it. All they want is speech and segments that they approve of. Anything else is propaganda. And again, they not only just want only speech that they approve of to be shown, but also just the people that they approve of. They don't want trans people to exist. They want trans people dead. No joke. I'm not kidding. They want them dead. The science is very, very clear on gender affirming care. They are wrong. They are hateful. And by the way, they want to talk about protecting kids. They're hurting children. They're hurting trans children. But they don't care about them. They're deeply, deeply afraid and absolutely bigoted about the things that they don't understand. Ben says, oh, I understand the agenda, and then goes on to prove how he doesn't understand the agenda at all. Trans agenda, you know what it is? The trans agenda is just to have trans people be able to live their lives and to be happy. That's it. To live their own lives. I'm not forcing you to be trans. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Oh, but the pronouns. It's the pronouns. I'm sorry, we use pronouns every single day. Dipshit. No. Again, conservatism based on fear, based on control. They want to control the personal lives of other people. And so it should be incredibly clear, 100% clear, who these people are and what they really want. Republicans need a subgroup of people to hate. Hate is a big part of their identity. Is dipshit a pronoun? Can be. All right. Moving on. Rapper and songwriter Lizzo is under a little bit of fire for some controversy. Fans of hers recently pressured the Grammy-winning artist to change a lyric that they found offensive. This word, of course, is a slur considered derogatory towards people with disabilities. So now she recently put out a song called Girls on Friday and used the word spaz to indicate that she was going to lose control. Now, fans and disability activists called on Lizzo to change what they called an ableist slur, a word seen as particularly harmful in some countries where it has a history of being used as a taunt. The word is based on spastic dysplasia, a form of cerebral palsy, a condition that causes motor impairments in the arms and legs. So now for Lizzo, according to the New York Times, who enjoys a warm public persona, produces upbeat feel-good music that promotes self-acceptance, the lyric struck fans as particularly off-brand. The criticism began immediately after the song. The latest single from her upcoming album, Special, was released on Friday. So now, what did she do? Again, her fans called her out, said, we don't like that word. That word is derogatory. It's a slur. She apologized, and she changed the word. And you know what I say? Based. Wonderful. According to the New York Times, by Monday, the major music streaming services had already substituted the original version of the song with one that replaces the line with, "Hold me back." You know what? I was going to read the lyrics, and then I imagined just like the Ben Shapiro cut of me reading Lizzo lyrics. And I thought, okay, maybe I won't do that. But look, in a statement posted to Instagram on Monday, Lizzo said that she understood the effects of harmful language, whether intentional or unintentional, because, quote, as a fat black woman in America, I've had many hurtful words used against me. Let me make one thing clear. I never want to promote derogatory language. Later adding, this is a result of me listening and taking action. I think that's great. Wonderful, wonderful. So now, of course, likely the right wing is probably raging right now. Oh, look at the woke mob. The wokies, they're eating their own. Go woke, go broke. Never apologize. Never admit weakness. Because the woke mob will all come destroy you. The SJWs. But you know what happened afterwards? her fans were like, great, you changed it. Wonderful. That's it. Everybody who had criticized her was like, thanks, wonderful, you did it. You listened to us and we're good. In fact, according to the Times, swift removal satisfied many of the fans and activists who had criticized her, believing it to be an example of someone listening, learning, and acting on new information. You know what that's called? That's called progress. I love it. I love progress. In fact, Hannah Divany, a disability advocate in Australia and self-proclaimed Lizzo fan, said this in an interview, that hearing the word in the original version had, quote, made me feel really uncomfortable. So now, why? Well, for her, spasticity refers to an unending, constant, painful tightness in my legs and other parts of my body, making life very difficult, and is not something that I can control. So when you read that, what people actually go through that have this, you think, oh my God, that sounds terrible. That sounds awful. Why don't we not make light of this by, using this flippantly? Why don't we avoid using it flippantly? And so now that same person was blown away by Lizzo's rapid reversal. She said, instead of being defensive, which a lot of people become defensive, honestly, the rapper took action once she had heard the criticism, making her a real, genuine ally because she's willing to learn. That's really the only thing you have to do. You just learn, and then you do better, and that's it. And then the controversy is gone. In fact, Ms. Devaney said this: I'm really glad that Lizzo changing it has led to lots of people learning that it is a slur. And while I obviously would have preferred she didn't use it in the first place, of course, I'm glad it became something of a teachable moment. That's probably the best outcome. Now, look, I'm familiar with this controversy, this criticism, because I used that word before. And someone in the chat, I don't know if you remembered that, but they had told me, hey, that's a slur. Please don't use that word. Fair enough. Now, originally, I had no idea. I was like, what's wrong with it? Then you start to look into the history, right? And how it's used mainly in Europe and the UK, for example. And, how it was used. Once you look into the history, you know why it's considered a slur. Warren Kerwin, a spokesman for Scope, a group in the UK that campaigns for equality for people with disabilities, said the term has been quite a common term for abuse for disabled people in the better part of 30 years in the UK. The differing cultural context may help explain why Lizzo, an American, used the term, even if it doesn't excuse it, he says. But praised Lizzo for handling the situation well once she had learned about the word. It was in her power to own that mistake and change it, and well done for doing that. Again, wonderful. Wonderful. I think it's a great thing that she took time to understand and to come to the conclusion, let's not use the word anymore. But this gets to the bigger point, right? That I think sometimes, and this is not an excuse, by the way, sometimes we're just not aware that these things are harmful. Until, of course, somebody points it out. I mean, how do you know unless somebody brings it to your attention? Because, again, not everybody's going to know this stuff, right? There was a time that I didn't know the T-slur was very bad. Now, again, in my context, it was usually reserved for talking about the transmission on a car, so I think you know what word I'm referring to. But again, you learn these things, you move on, and you do better. And that's the whole point, right? And so the whole idea about cancel culture, right? This really plays into that discussion. Lizzo has not been canceled. And why would she be? Her fixing this didn't cost her anything. And guess what? The result is that people like her even more. And that the people who were harmed potentially are now feeling validated because they have been heard. And so I think that's really important here. And also, let's get back to the political stuff, the the culture war stuff, right? This is the Republicans' worst fear. Conservatives admitting that they did something wrong and then apologizing for it. They can't handle it. There's this weirdo mantra on the right wing, which is, we must never give an inch. We never apologize. In fact, we must double down. If Lizzo were a conservative musician, and imagine that, right? If she's like a Ted Nugent, well, you could see someone like him doubling and tripling down as if she were, Trump and the modern Republican Party. Because again, they weirdly get off on this stuff, on making people upset, on doing these sorts. Again, this is the whole free speech argument as well on the right, where they just want to say whatever they want without consequences. And the things that they want to say, the things that they're itching to say, they can't wait, are the things that are going to get them in trouble. Again, I think everybody on the left agrees that conservatives just really, really want to say the N-word. Oh, they're beside themselves. Oh, I want to say it. I want to say the N-word so badly. I can't help it. I must say it. I must say it, but I don't want to be canceled. I don't want to feel consequences for saying these slurs, but I really want to say them. Well, if you want to say it so badly, well, that says something about you, doesn't it? That it's not really about freedom of speech, that it's about the freedom to be hateful. So, but look, and by the way, that final thing, that really gets to the point of where a lot of this conservative reaction to the culture issues is not even about standing up for real principles. It's just about owning the libs. Whereas, again, good people, decent people, will see this criticism and go, you know what, you're right. I should listen, and I should make some adjustments. And I think that's a good thing. Again, props to Lizzo for listening, for caring as much, and to, for admitting and fixing those mistakes. It takes a big person to do, especially in this day and age. All right. One more story here. We're running over. Once again, baby boomers are giving some terrible financial advice to younger people who can't seem to afford a home. Now, this is, of course, during a time of record inflation, record high student loan debt, home prices that are incredibly out of reach, especially in the cities. And I mean, it's a really bad financial situation for younger people, millennials as well as Gen Z. Now, to show you how bad it is, only a quarter of those aged 25 to 34 with average incomes own their own home. That's down from 2/3 back in 1995. So, not good. Now, yet, more than half of all baby boomers, when asked, and of course, those were people born between 1946 and 1964, believe that it is not socioeconomic factors that are fueling this decline. No. The real reason is coffee and Netflix. You're going out for lattes, and then you're watching the Netflix. Too much. It's too much. All they need to do is just talk about the avocado toast. Among the lifestyle choices identified by baby boomers in a recent study by researchers at King's College London were takeaway coffees and food, mobile phones, Netflix, and foreign holidays. Foreign holidays. Now, look, this is not surprising. we've all done, like, seen, dozens, hundreds of the same story. Boomers have been saying the same thing for so many years, for a long, long time. Now, what's new about this, what's interesting, and I haven't seen anybody talking about this, is how many millennials actually agree with this. And that's the problem here. Okay, so let me give you the details on that. Young people themselves, according to the study, are also more likely to agree than disagree with the statement that takeaway coffees and food are the reason that their generation cannot afford to buy a home. So either that is incredibly disastrous and they have just like bought into this narrative, or it's like super sarcastic, which again, I could see my generation doing, being like, okay, yeah, sure, it's still avocado toast in the coffees, whatever, get off my nuts. I don't know. Now, the study says that 48% of millennials believe that young people are too careless with their money when trying to save. That is just below 52% of baby boomers with the same view. Again, it really irritates me to think that my generation, almost half of them, might have actually internalized this absolute bullshit narrative. Yeah, okay, sure. I guess I'm lazy and I like my coffee and Netflix. So I guess it's my fault that I can't afford a home. Not true at all. Not true at all. And by the way, same people taking the poll are like, oh yeah, also there are socioeconomic factors. Bobby Duffy, director of the Policy Institute at King's College London, said lifestyle expenses were minor factors when compared with the huge increases in house prices and required deposits. The suggestion that the huge challenges facing young people in buying their own home can be solved by skipping fancy coffees and Netflix entirely misses the point. But it's still believed by half the public. Now look, I like Netflix. I like coffee. I like tacos. If I lived in a big city, I wouldn't be able to afford a house, honestly. I mean, very, very few people can. Especially on YouTube money? No, you're kidding me. Seriously. No. I am, though, lucky enough to live in a place where housing is cheap and having a career where I don't have to travel. I can literally do this from my house. And guess what? Not everybody can do what I can do. Not everybody does what I do. And look, most people do have regular jobs where they might have to commute, travel. My wife, for example, commutes over an hour for work every single day. And at $5 a gallon, ouch. And again, that's not even always an option for people. There are people who can't drive. And then, of course, for them, there's not a lot of public transportation. And then, by the way, you also have to point out that in America, public transportation, not always the safest thing to do, at least for certain people. So there are a lot of issues here with people being able to go where the jobs are. And that's what you have to do. If you don't do what I do or work online, you have to go where the jobs are. And a lot of the jobs are in bigger cities. So, and again, that's not always an option. When you look at the causes of people not being able to afford homes, Netflix and coffee, they ain't it. They ain't it. In fact, at the same time that they are blaming luxury goods like Netflix, there was also a high level of recognition among the same public that agreed that economic factors were an issue. For example, the study found that 76% of people agreed that adults aged under 40 could not buy their own home because of issues such as high housing prices, stricter lending rules, and stagnant wages. And let me just add, too, foreign investment in homes. You have foreign investors that are buying up real estate and using that as a way to funnel money, to basically launder their money. And, of course, that prices people out of the market. And there's not a lot of people, not a lot of politicians are actually going to do anything. Why? Because there's a lot of real estate money in politics. Getting back to that corruption angle. Okay. So now, that said, the people in the poll know the problems and still think, yeah, but if you hadn't bought that coffee in the morning, then maybe eventually you'd go and have enough money for a house. Maybe. In fact, let's go to one of the so-called experts here. This is Susie Orman. You may have heard of her as a financial guru, right? She says, let's say you spend around $100 in coffee each month. If you were to put that $100 into a Roth IRA each month instead, after 40 years, the money would have grown to around $1 million with a 12% rate of return. Even with a 7% rate of return, you would still have over $250,000. That is assuming, of course, the stock markets are, going to continue giving a return and not crash and burn like they do, or like they seem to do every couple of decades. Again, the last financial crisis was back in 2008. 40 years. So here's the thing, right? These are the people who are already wealthy that are telling you, oh, no, waste half your life by not doing or buying anything fun. Avoid fun for 40 years and maybe you'll have enough for a house. Assuming, of course, the oligarchs don't crash the economy and wipe out all of your stock returns. I'm going to say no deal about that. All right? Now, I'm also not saying blow your money like an idiot. No. Again, if you can, save money. And that's a very big if you can, because there's a lot of people, one of the biggest problems here is that people do not have enough money to save. So even if they want to, they just can't. And again, part of the problem. But if you're lucky enough to be in a position where you can still stick away some money, yeah, it's always smart to do so, of course. But at the same time, you also only live once. And for God's sakes, if you want the coffee, drink the coffee. Buy the coffee. Buy the damn coffee. If you want to watch your favorite TV show on Netflix, watch your favorite show. You got to enjoy your life. It's the only one you're going to get. It's the only one you have. And I got news for you. You're not going to be able to take any of the wealth with you when you die. So you might as well, while you're here, try to at least enjoy your life just a little bit. And that's what people like Orman tends to miss, right? Yes, again, it's good to take some of your money and put it into a savings account. Sure, or put it into an IRA. That's great. You can do both. It just means you're going to save a little bit less and maybe drink a little bit less coffee. Well, that seems like the smarter way to go if you do that. But try to at least have some fun with your life. And by the way, one last thing is I really hate how these conversations are intensely focused on the individual and individual choices. I'm not saying the individual doesn't have responsibility over their own money. Of course they do. But we also, the same people that individualize these problems also ignore the systemic problems. And that's the real issue here. We need to boost wages for workers. We need to find ways to lower housing prices. One way, of course, is to go after the foreign investors who are money laundering. We need the government to actually do its job and pass policy that helps make our lives a little bit easier. Instead of course, pushing 100% of the blame onto the individual. And by the way, they do the same thing when it comes to climate change. If only you would have used that plastic straw, or if you wouldn't have used that plastic straw, use the paper straw instead. And while you're using your paper straw that's falling apart, you have frickin' ExxonMobil over there and 99 other corporations doing 70% of the emissions. But hey, you didn't want to use a paper straw, so the world is on fire. That's your fault. No, it's not. Stop individualizing everything. Again, there is personal responsibility and there's also societal responsibility. These two things have to work together. And unfortunately, I do not see anybody on cable news or any of the experts talking about the societal responsibility. And it's probably because they want to ignore that. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be the fact that they're all rich? And that societal responsibility, to provide more opportunity might come at the cost of a tiny bit more in taxes. Oh. No, the saddest thing is that they've convinced a lot of people, and I'm talking about the wealthy elite here, that, all the problems come down to you and your poor choices instead of the poor choices of people that are bought by the corporations, by large donors, and by, of course, the poor choices of, again, other people that are in charge. And the generation that basically had so much handed to them and pissed it away. Okay. Well then, there we are. All right, so socialism was when butt clean. I think I tweeted that like a few days ago. I forget what it was about though. All right. Let me get rid of the sidebar here. So, let's go to I missed something yesterday, so I wanted to actually, give credit here on Twitch. Hunger Games 1989. Thank you for resubbing for a month to tier 1 for 6 months. Really, really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Thank you. That's one way that, of course, helps the show continue. So the system is working just super, and you're the problem is always the refrain. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And again, they do that absolutely on purpose. All right, so super chats here. Gabby Mathis says, please report the Lauren Boebert story tomorrow. Thank you. I love you, Jeff. I'm married to a Michigander. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we're good people. The Dark Canuck says, overtime pay, my friend. Cheers from your Canadian fans. Well, thank you, Dark Canuck. Appreciate that. Tyler Heckner says, generational bickering is a distraction, in my opinion. And yet it is something that always continues to happen. But yeah, every generation tends to think that they're better than the younger one. Seems pretty ridiculous. All right. So that's super chats. Thank you for donating. If you haven't already, please like and share the stream. Really, 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 really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Did I miss like a raid or something? I don't know. James from the internet. Thank you for dropping by. It's a big gay and a big gay industrial complex. It's all terribly complicated. Okay. Fun. But thank you for dropping by. I really, really appreciate that. No raid. Okay. By the way, we will be doing a raid. So let's do that. We are going to raid into, let's go to KF Logan 1875. Do that raid here. To everyone else on YouTube, again, thank you. Really, really, really appreciate that. Love you all. Have a wonderful, fantastic evening. And we'll see you back tomorrow. We're going to have a special segment with a guest. So it's going to be kind of like an interview thing. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy it because we're going to be talking about some serious legislation. That's going to be tomorrow. So thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
Big, massive dumps.
Peachtree Day. And why their due process rights are being so flagrantly and horrifically violated.
It's not a salami sandwich. It's a viable baby in the womb.
Obama.
Sexual anarchy.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.